Hi, friends, and welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas. Now, I'm here to help you live the life that you design instead of choosing a life that you think you have to settle for. Guys, this is episode 52. Oh my God. Which means that we have been hanging out together for a whole year. We've been going together for a year. Oh my God, this is amazing. So it's just going to be me and you this episode. There are a lot of things that I want to say, and I usually really prepare for episodes. This one, I just have like a sticky note of things that I want to make sure that I touch on, but it's just kind of going to be a freestyle a little bit, you know? And I had to start with a huge, huge, huge thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for me. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Thank you for partnering with me on this journey. Thank you for telling a friend who told a friend. Thank you for signing up for the Next Nuggets newsletter. Thank you for everything. Thank you to the guests. It's really like me going out to these people. It's one thing to have friends on, which I do have a lot of friends on. So we already have an established relationship, but I'm also going out to strangers like, hey, you don't know me. I have a podcast and I would love you to come on. And, these are people who have a lot to do and a lot to juggle, and they share their time with us, and not with no guarantee that they're going to personally or professionally benefit on the other side. And I don't take that for granted because I really do believe that this is a value add. And, but I appreciate people's time, and how they have just been so authentic and generous with it. So thank you to every single one of the guests. Thank you to folks who have leveraged their own cachet and their own Rolodex to have people come on this podcast, namely my brother, who's like asked his friends to like do him a solid, which does me a solid. So I really, really appreciate that. So thank you to every single person who's just been a part of this. Also, new our social media team that I'm working with. Thank you to them, Pink Deer team, especially Stephanie, who I work with every single week to get all of the stuff up on, so I can show up more consistently on Instagram and TikTok, because I wasn't really ticking or talking before this. I had dabbled, but I was not committed to doing that. And so that team on Facebook, that team has really, really helped me out and has gotten the word out, more about this podcast. So it takes a whole village, and I really appreciate the village. I have really never discussed how this got started, and people ask me. It's kind of a long story. We won't make it too long. But this podcast, it got started last year, but this idea, I tried it in like 2019. So the way the story goes is that, so I moved to New York City in 2018. I was freelancing at the local news station that I was working at. And because I was freelancing, that meant I could do other things. So I was already in that mind space of, all right, I need to just pursue other opportunities. What I'm doing, how I'm doing it is not really working for me. And freelancing gives me more freedom to pursue other things. Because if you don't know about news contracts, when you're on air, they literally own your image and likeness. So you are unable to participate in pretty much anything else. It's really hard to make money any other ways if you are under contract. And if you do make money other ways, it might be writing a book. It might be being a professor. Those are some of the common things that like reporters and anchors do outside of work that gives them a little bit more money. But there's a thing in the contract called the right of first refusal, which means that you have to get it approved by, it might not even be actually the right of first refusal. But anyway, you have to get everything you do outside of work approved, and they're likely to say no. So, and if you have certain contracts like network contracts, Mara was on here. Mara Escampo was on here, and she talked about how she had a podcast, but like it was owned by the company. So if you do something while you're under contract, the company can own the IP, and so when you leave, you can't take it with you. It depends on what your contract is, but basically, the general thing is that they own you essentially. So since I was freelancing, I had more freedom. So I was just like, okay, I wanted to create a YouTube show. And I shared this with somebody, and they said they thought it was a great idea and would love to come on board. And I was like, Lord, look, you are putting people in my path to make things happen. And so the YouTube show is the foundation of what ended up being the podcast, really talking about people, about their life transitions. And so this person had camera equipment and had contacts in the city, and said that one of their friends would allow us to use their facility up in Harlem to shoot the show. I would just have to pay, I don't even know how much it was. However much it was a lot of money for me then, because it was a stretch. It was a sacrifice because I was making no money freelancing at all. Freelancing, and then, New York City prices for everything, I was tight. I was struggling. And so, but I was like, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to figure it out. So we go ahead and schedule these interviews with people. One of them was Dawn, who was on one of the first guests on this podcast. But so people would come out, and we would do this on the weekends, and I was working the morning shift on the weekend. So I think I had to be in at like 4:00 in the morning, and I would just bring my clothes to change into. God, the weekends, it was like a guaranteed 12-hour shift. They would work us. It was crazy. And then I would secretly kind of go up. I did not tell anybody that I was doing this. Go up to Harlem. With all my stuff, sometimes I bring my camera and stop by the Subway, because we didn't have a green room. I didn't really have very much money, but I do have home training. So I would want to, provide some sandwiches and some drinks and stuff for the people who were coming to help us with this project, the guests that we were going to have that we would interview. And so we did a few at that location. We did one at one of my friends' her apartment. And so I'm thinking, this is great, right? We get, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 interviews in the can. And then we have to edit them, right? And so that was this person's responsibility to edit them. And so kind of time would go by. I would check in with this person like, hey, do you have everything you need? We're trying to get like B-roll, which is a video that like covers, part of the conversation. I would go out. I remember for my friend Dawn, I went out to Jamaica, Queens, which was like a train and a bus to get to her juice bar with my camera, lugging it, just trying to just make this work in the little bit of free time that I had. And I was working crazy, crazy hours, exhausted all the time. But I was really committed to getting this done. In the same time frame, management comes to me. And again, I was freelance, so I was trying to get all this done. And management comes to me and they say, hey, you're doing such a great job. We want to put you under contract. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is not necessarily what I want. And I haven't been able to get this other thing to pop off, but okay. And so I negotiate this YouTube show that I'm trying to create, which was supposed to be called Courageous Conversations. And so I'm basically told, I was like, well, I'm already working on this YouTube show and it's going to be coming out soon. So, I can't stop. I've already done the things for it. And so I basically was given a date where it has to come out by this date or you can't do it. So I'm going to this person who's supposed to be editing it. And I'm just like, hey, now we're on deadline. Like, this is a circumstance. Like, we've got to get this thing out. I had hopes and dreams for it. I bought the domain name for a website, like all the things. But again, it was like a secret thing that I was kind of doing on the side. And so there were delays. I was sick one week, or like, oh, I had this commitment that I had to do. There was just always something that delayed it, but I didn't want to seem pushy. But then it came to where we were really getting into crunch time to my deadline, which I had communicated. And I was sent, oh, I'm going to send it to you this weekend. It's just a rough cut. Okay, cool. Yeah, send me the rough cut. And it was Dawn's episode. Dawn was going to be our first one. And it was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. Terrible. And it was so bad that I had to scrap the whole project. Scrap the whole thing, because I just was like, I can't come out with my experience and present this and be taken seriously. When I say I was hot, I was so mad. I was so mad. One, because I had spent money that I didn't have to invest in this project. Like, I spent the money. The other person wasn't spending money. They just invested time and equipment, but not money. There was like a lot of things that kind of went on there, but I just felt so dejected because now I was under contract. I was going to be under contract and I could not pursue anything else. This was 2019. And I just felt stuck. That was supposed to be, I didn't think it was going to be like this amazing whatever, but it was just going to be me taking a step to get to where I want to go. It was me acting up. We have that segment as the last segment of every podcast. And that was just going to be a way that I could just demonstrate what else I could do, other than, at the time, I was just doing stories that, like, at the subway, talking about somebody who was hit over the head 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? It's just like stuff that I was not talking about anything I cared about. And this was not just an outlet, like, career wise, like, oh my gosh, this could lead to other things. But this was always, just a creative outlet so I could breathe, because I just felt so suffocated. And so when everything fell apart, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so angry, but I was also so sad. And I felt like, man, like, this is a failure. This is an L. This is a whole L. So then I'm under contract. So what do? I show up for work. And I give it my best, and I participate, even though I'm feeling not excited about anything. I participate and I do the things, and I try to work within the system and the framework that I have, because I recognize that, like, sulking and feeling sorry for yourself actually does not produce any results. I just had to go back to the drawing board and figure out another way, that within now a very rigid system. That was 2019. Fast forward. The only thing that I knew when I left my news job, the only thing that I knew for sure, was that I understood that I was going to be giving up a lot of what my normal was. But the only thing that I decided that I was not willing to give up was interviewing people, because I loved my career. I just didn't like how it had manifested and kind of where I was doing it or how I was doing it. But I loved my career. I got into journalism for all the right reasons, right? I love to talk to people, and interviewing people is my absolute favorite thing to do on earth. And when I thought about what could I do forever, interviewing people would be it. When they say, what would you do if you didn't get paid to do it? Interviewing people. That's it. So I wasn't willing to give that up. So I was like, how can I do it? Oh, a podcast, right? Did I know how to do a podcast? Absolutely not. Did it matter? Absolutely not. So before my 40th birthday, I'm not a person who asks for gifts, but that year I put in the family group chat, that I wanted this mic, a Shure mic, right? Which is the top of the line mic. I asked them for it. It's a few $100s. My sister and my nephews gave it to me for my birthday. All right. So that's one thing. And I was telling my friends, close friends, about like what I wanted to do. And my friend Ronnie, who you've heard about on the podcast, and if you listen to that first episode, that's who I'm talking about. He is who I always call. He's like a brother, and he's like who I always call for all the technical questions. He's a professional photojournalist, and because I don't know what cords, I don't know how to hook any of this stuff up. And so I feel like he was just like, check your mail. And he had bought me like the connection. I don't even know what they're called, but the connection things to the mic, right? And then he told me like the mic stand to buy. And then I needed a new computer. My old computer had lasted like 10 years at least, and couldn't support video, right? It would just literally self-destruct if I tried to record video on it. So my mom was like, I want to invest in the thing that you're doing. Like, I really want to. So I'm going to buy you a computer. Like, I didn't even ask for it. And so I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So my mother buys me a computer. Okay, great. I know how to record interviews. I knew the platform. I use Riverside. I knew I was going to use Riverside because one of the jobs that I was doing, we used Riverside. So I was like, okay, we're just going to use that. So I recorded all the interviews, right? Not all the interviews. I recorded like 5 or 6 interviews to begin with, maybe even more. But I recorded all these interviews. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to get Adobe. I haven't used Adobe since my first job in 2006, but we're going to figure out how to use Adobe. So again, called Ronnie. So edited the first 5 or 6 episodes. And then I was like, all right, how does this get into your phones? I have no idea. So there's this guy on Instagram that I was following who always talks about podcasts. And so I just messaged him. I don't know this guy. And he sends me voice notes on Instagram about how to upload it and what that is or whatever. Because I had been doing research and I just couldn't figure it out. And there are too many options. And I'm the type of person where I'm just like, I have to get this done. I was delaying, and I had to get it done. Okay, great. Go to Ronnie's house. We shoot this intro video. BTS. That's Ronnie. Because I figured I can't ask other people to be vulnerable with me if I'm not vulnerable with them and explaining to people what the why is. We shoot that video. Ronnie cuts it. Great. I've got everything. All right. So we are ready to go. We are ready to upload this. And I just need to put it on social media. And I remember that day, Sunday, I put it on social media, part of the video, because it was like my first episode is like 8 or 9 minutes. Oh my God. The way my stomach was like doing flips, I remember posting it and throwing my phone on my bed because I was like, I can't even take it.
We're here.
So here.
But how did you get to this point?
How did I get to this point?
Take me back to that day, man, when you decided to quit.
I decided to quit. I feel like I'm sweating. It's not going to be understood.
It happened to you.
I know, Ronnie, but I'm just like a Black woman. And then people started texting me, girl, what? Oh my God. And I just felt overwhelmed because everything that I had been through, and, I haven't even scratched the surface, was secret, right? I had only told like a few people. Like most people had no idea. They may have been familiar with my work career, but they had no idea like what I was experiencing and what that was like or whatever. And so I kind of shared some of that and, what I was going through, the decisions that I was making in my life. And it just got such an overwhelming response. And so at the beginning, the goal was to just be consistent because I knew that in the podcast space, that's what people struggled with was consistency. So I was just like, my first thing was like, get to 5 episodes. because there's a huge drop off where people don't even get to 5 episodes. And then I was like, okay, get to 20 episodes because there's a huge drop off where people get to 20 episodes, where I'm figuring things out. Like I just figured it out. I didn't know the podcast space. I didn't know that the title mattered and that you needed search engine optimization for the title. I didn't know that you needed a thumbnail for YouTube, and that really matters, and getting people to click. Like, there's this whole business behind the podcast. But in the beginning, everybody who asked me like, I don't know if it should start or blah blah blah, I was like, first, just start. Like, stop talking about it and just hit record and figure the thing out. There's a low barrier to entry. And, so many people fall off that if you just get started and keep going, like it will just bode well for you, right? Like it'll just work in your favor. And you just got to get out of your own way and just pull the trigger and just do it if this is something you want to do. So I just was like, every Sunday, I would just text Ronnie and say, oh my God, another episode is out. Because sometimes, like, truth be told, sometimes it feels like doing this podcast feels like it will take me out. It is so incredibly time consuming. I love it, but it's a job to do it the way I want to do it. Now, other people, I've heard people say, oh, it takes a few hours. Okay, maybe for you, I don't know what you're doing, and maybe I'm just doing it all the way wrong, but it takes me a lot more than a few hours because I actually research every guest. I'm booking every guest. I'm editing it. And I want it to be a certain way. And so, yes, sometimes that you just got to just go and pull the trigger. Also, what do you have around you? My nephew, Gavin, shout out to Gavin, my baby nephew, but he's now a freshman in college. But he was in high school, and he's an amazing musician. Both of my nephews are amazing musicians, but my nephew Gavin, he had produced an album. Like, he is just, ever since he was a baby, he was just all into the drums. Like, so I was just like, hey, I'm gonna pay you. Can you come up with a theme music for me, please? All you got to tell him is you gonna pay him. So I paid him, and he's just such a professional. Like, he's such a great kid, and he created the music. Like, my tribe just rallied around me like it was a family affair. Family in my actual Cline-Thomas family and chosen family. And they just all rallied. And so it's just like, yeah, there are a lot of things that I don't have. I am doing this still in my New York City apartment. I'm not in a studio. It's not fancy. But when I learned something new, I just implement it, and I just kept going. And I can't believe you've been doing it for 52 episodes, and it's just blowing my mind. When you go into podcasting, a lot of it then, of, okay, your metrics and who's listening and whatever, and it takes over. And I kind of went down that rabbit hole. Podcasting is not a short, like, blip, right? Like, you've got to do it for the long haul for it to, like, yield big results. But even in the first year, it has yielded big things for me in terms of that I didn't even anticipate, right? I was just like focusing on the numbers. But it's like the numbers, what people say the numbers are, where you need to get, 5,000 downloads an episode. Like, yeah, that's great. I'm not a celebrity though, right? Like, so that's going to take a while. And, but what it has helped me do is that it helped me rebrand. People know me now more for this podcast than they did for my almost 16-year news career. And I love it. I love that. It has led to me having speaking engagements, talking about like how I have structured my whole next best thing and how other people could do that too, both from what I've done and what I've learned from dozens of interviews. And it's really helped me make new friends. And I didn't recognize that in the season, I would really need that. I didn't recognize that I would, I tell people that I thought I was just going to find a new job, right? Like, I thought that I was just changing careers, perhaps. But what I really was doing was blowing up my whole entire life. And for me, you can't, and Trisha Tate talked about the tectonic plates shifting. Um, for me, what I know to be true is that you can't apply, I guess you can't question one area of your life fundamentally, and not apply those same questions to every single area of your life. So I wasn't just like, oh, I just want a new career. I was like, no, fundamentally, from a cellular level, I need to really rethink how I'm living my whole life. And so that means how I'm making money, but that also means who I'm spending time with. That means what I'm listening to. That means how I'm in community with others. Um, what am I learning? Like everything was up for scrutiny. And that has been a really difficult process because some things that fit before, as my therapist just told me, just some things and some people just no longer fit. That's been really, really difficult to kind of manage, but it's been really necessary for me to move forward. So this podcast has been a space where I didn't even anticipate it, where I've made new friends. Just not reestablished, deepen some relationships, but also made new friends. And so have new people in my orbit. And that has been amazing, like absolutely amazing. And our guests have shown us that, success is not elusive. I say your next is within reach. And there are so many themes that people keep talking about that I hope that you're getting. One of the things is that it takes work. I know we're talking, I know the soft life is out there and stuff like that, but even the soft life takes work. The soft life is a choice. To have a soft life, you probably have to work beforehand. You know what I mean? To afford you the ability to have a soft life, right? So all of this is work. You're not going to get it by osmosis. Like listening is not enough. I hope it spurs you into action. Your network is so important, that who you're around, you surround yourself with, actually really, really matters. And if the people that you're around have a limited capacity, it's going to be much harder for you to go to your next if everybody you're around only has a limited capacity. And that doesn't make them bad people. I just judge everything by capacity and understanding what people have the capacity for. And if they desire to grow. And if you're around a bunch of people who can't do it, can't see it, can't always question why, it's going to be really, really hard to grow. It's like growing in gravel as opposed to growing in like lush green grass. So that's another thing that folks have talked about consistently here: showing up intentionally, not willy-nilly. The word for the year is intentional. And just having a strategy. That what are we doing this for? Like, what's the point? What is the point? What are we doing this for? So I've just learned so much from this podcast. It has afforded me, it has forced me to put myself out there so much more, which is anti to what you do in news. Like in news, your feelings don't matter. And it's necessary, right? Like there's certain parts of it that are necessary, but in terms of like you want to report objectively, objective is objective, right? So there's that. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but there is a need to separate yourself from the content so that the content can stand alone without you and all your stuff interfering with it. But in that practice, for me at least, I recognize that I also was standing outside of myself and just kind of going along and not I was asking myself, I had to put a stake in the ground to ask myself some really, really tough questions. But the thing is that I didn't know a whole lot of the answers. And this podcast has really helped me find my voice and has gotten me more used to sharing it, which was a faux pas, which could get you canceled in the news industry if you talk too much about how you felt and how you feel and especially what you experienced in the industry. And so, it has given me a sense of freedom and being and making freedom my norm, making that normal. That is now my default, because now after 52 weeks, I have the muscle memory to show up as myself. I have the muscle memory required to grow in public, which is what so many people fear. People who I've talked to who, talk about wanting to start a podcast. I'm in no stretch of the imagination expert, but I've done this for 52 weeks. So I know a little bit of something about, I can share what my experience has been. And so many people are like, what if somebody says this, or what if, and I was like, the only what if I care about is like, I know it's going to fail if I don't even try. So I'm going to try. And like, what is failure really? Because even if I were to stop this, even if this were to be the last episode, the amount of stuff that I have learned by doing this has fundamentally changed me. I'm completely different in just terms of content creation, what works, what doesn't work, like trying new things out, figuring out the format that I like, what works with you all, what you guys like, what you all gravitate towards, because you all surprise me all the time. Episodes where I'm like, oh, this is going to be it. You're like, not exactly. And once I'm thinking like, this is fine, y'all are like, I love this so much. So it's so interesting to me of like what people like, what people don't like, and learning that and how to lean into that. It's just taught me so much. So yeah, 52 weeks, here we are. I'm not going to cry. I was like, I'm doing well. Things are fundamentally different. This has grown along with me. I always feel like, as I said before, it's so much work. But every time I am so tired, without fail, somebody sends me a message and says, oh, I really loved this part of this episode, or I really needed to hear this because X, Y, and Z is going on right now in my life. And so I'm not like going to be on anybody's top Apple podcast list, but that's not what I did it for. I did it for, I was doing so well because it was like a personal. Why am I out here on the interwebs crying? It just was like, this is just, my first post. I said, when I posted this, I said, this is more than a podcast. I was doing so well. It's just more than a podcast. It was really, my therapist told me this week, she said, you have taken everything that has happened to you and you've tried to turn it around. Why am I? Get it together. Hold on. I knew this was going to happen. Almost done. I am almost done. But she said that you've taken everything that's happened to you and you have tried to turn it around. And you guys don't even know. I have not even scratched the surface. But every single thing I do right now, I'm such a crybaby. Everything that I do right now is about wanting people to feel seen, because I know what it feels like not to be seen. It's about, helping people realize that they have agency in situations that they don't like, because I've been told what I'm not, what I should not aspire for, what I cannot do. It's about saying that, whatever it is that you're experiencing, that there could be, just being open to the fact that there could be another way, that your happiness does not have to be on hold. Because I thought my happiness couldn't even exist. So that's why I started a podcast. Because even if I don't have a corporate platform, I do have a corner of the internet where I could just simply say, keep going. You're not crazy. What you want was put in your heart for a reason, and that you owe it to yourself. Not to other people, you owe it to yourself to at least try. And that failure isn't failure if you learn along the way. And so I've been able to see people like change their lives. Like I have actually, and I never anticipated that. And that is a gift. That is a gift. Because I don't want people to feel what I felt. And I don't want them to feel like they're stuck. And if they do, to understand that, hey, like, here's free knowledge, free, I told my therapist, I was like, I was looking around for so long for like help and guidance and books, and I just couldn't find it. I just couldn't find the thing that spoke to me. There's a lot of things that are out there, but I could not find that thing that really spoke to me, that talked to me as a Black woman, that understood that I can't just move in the world willy-nilly like some of these other people can. I just can't say everything, that the consequences are real, and so I just, with this podcast, I'm just trying to create it. So thank you. Thank you for being here and for listening and for watching and subscribing and telling a friend to tell a friend. Although this podcast sometimes tries to take me out. Oh, God, it's a lot of work. We're going to keep going and keep sharing and keep talking. Subscribe to the Next Nuggets newsletter. Subscribe to this wherever you get this podcast. Subscribe to it. Please continue to share with me like what stands out to you and what you love, and keep encouraging each other. It is my privilege. You all are healing me, and I appreciate it. Until next time, until next week. See you later. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing with Andrea Cline-Thomas, a Mountain Court Media production. The music was written, recorded, and produced by Gavin Casey, also known as Dark Purple. Now, if you like what you heard, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and write a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share it with friends. And I hope this episode helps you on your journey. See you next time.